over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff going on over there right now, including daily NHL picks from Parker Michaels, daily college basketball picks from Kyle Hunter. We've got daily NBA stuff from Alan Moody, both full games and first halves. He's also putting his spin on college basketball totals and NBA totals as well. So lots of daily basketball stuff over at the website, including some detailed game breakdowns. For example, today from Corey Papps looking at Florida versus Auburn, from Jonathan Willis looking at Kansas versus Kansas State. So a lot of good content over there at the website. My Pebble Beach Pro-Am preview posted over there as well. So much stuff going on. Even though football is done, we've still got you fully covered over at BangTheBook.com. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. Sign up at DSI using that promo code BTB and the number 200. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We start with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
Well, I'll tell you this, I think it's warmer in Cleveland than it is in Las Vegas.
Well, I mean, yes. See, here's the crazy thing, right? So last week, single digits or below zero, and then over the weekend, it was 60 degrees on Sunday. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's 37 degrees right now, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'm right there with you. I don't know. It's cold. No, yesterday it definitely was warmer. It was warmer there than it was here. So you guys had all that ice and snow, and now what? You got rivers, stuff's melting.
Oh, yeah. Yep. A lot of people dealing with some flooding, and I know my brother's basement floods all the time when it gets like this. So hopefully he's doing all right. But I guess we'll chill things down a little bit more here and talk about what's going on the ice. And, you know, Brian, something that's gotten a lot of run here, I know specifically VSiN's been talking a lot about this here this season, and it's something that I was just so busy with football I didn't even pick up on. A lot of betting volume on first period overs this year, and some teams that are just significant outliers. Tampa Bay, 76.9%, Chicago, 75.5%, Columbus, 70.6%. What's going on with first periods this year?
Well, it's a shiny new thing. I will tell you, I've been on VSiN with their good friends, Paul Howard, Mitch Moss, on their morning show, and they've been making a big deal about it, and those numbers are ridiculous with Tampa Bay and Chicago specifically. But now the betting market's caught up to it, and the inflation on the juice, everything's over 1.5. I've never seen a 2. Maybe there's been a 2 or occasional 2. Some of these teams, they'll never go to 2.5. I'm glad. All I know is I'm glad everybody's talking about hockey. I've been doing first period overs for 2 years. It's like it's the shiny new thing. The thing I generally do, Adam, is on average, like tonight, whatever, we got near a dozen games. I try to identify generally 3 games, and I'll do a 3-team parlay, and on average it pays 9-2, 5-1, even with the inflated juice on it. And the rationale behind it is some teams obviously are high-scoring teams, but the premise in the beginning of the game, somebody has to get the lead, so they go for it. And even good teams go for it. And even at this time of year, teams will go for it. The games are going to shift where you're going to see a lot more unders for the total for the game, because in a 2-2 game with 8 minutes to go in a game, teams pretty much start protecting for the point. And they'll, whatever happens in overtime happens, but they'll be much more conservative in nature. But out of the gate, teams go for it. And then if a team gets the lead, the team that's down starts to press quickly to try to, get the equalizer. So games tend to start fast and then slow down. It's not an automatic. For some teams it is. I mean, last night, the Rangers and the Kings, the game flew over in the first period. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's a new thing, and I'm thrilled that people are talking about hockey betting, because we've kind of been on an island on that for a decade, but the first period overs have been there for a while.
Well, it's kind of a bummer for you, somebody who's been around doing the first period betting for a long time, to see that your edge has, almost completely dried up, especially with the heavy juice that's placed on these. 6.11 goals per game here in the NHL this year, scoring definitely up league-wide. Here's my question, though. This is getting a lot of run, and, we talk about buy points. You look to, buy low and sell high in this business. Well, obviously right now, this is priced out about as much as it possibly could be. But as these games increase in importance, you would expect things to tighten up. So do you feel like at some point here you may start playing some of these first period unders just because of where the market's at?
Oh, no, I have occasionally, thrown some first period unders. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Recently, it was don't know, like a Minnesota and the Kings game, or something like that. Where two goalies are playing terrific. I think with me it was a Bruins game too. Rash was playing good. No, it's like handicapping a game. But even as the games tighten up, teams still come out in the beginning of games trying to establish rhythm on the forecheck, that they're going to be physical at the beginning of the game. And the other thing I would say to you too, Bud, is I think it's human nature in hockey. They say, a penalty in the first period should be a penalty in the third period. Well, this is not the case. It's never been the case. So I think in the first period, you're likely inclined to get more power plays at the beginning of the game. And then, if it's a tight game, unless it's something egregious for the most part, sometimes the referees will put the whistle away in the third period. So the addition you get by playing the first period overs is there are likely to be power plays out of the gate.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And, we'll see how tonight's card sets up. As you mentioned, a ton of games on the board here tonight. I believe it is actually 12. Let's touch on a couple of these games tonight. No, you're a Sabres guy. I'm a Sabres guy as well. So let's talk about that Wild versus Sabres game tonight. Virtual coin flip here based on the line. A lot of minus 105s on both sides, or minus 110 at some of the shops out there. Sabres reportedly changing up their lines quite a bit, trying to get something generated. I guess I saw today they're going to separate Skinner and Eichel from being on the same line. So a little bit of uncertainty tonight for Buffalo.
I will say this to you, Adam. This is a must-win for Buffalo. A must-win. They're 3 points out of the final playoff spot. We talked about on this podcast, I know we did, 3-4 weeks ago. I said, watch out for Columbus. Columbus is going to drop like a rock with the distraction with Panarin and then the Bobrovsky thing. So now Buffalo's 3 points behind Columbus. They are in their second game of a 7-game homestand. And they have to make hay, and they have to make hay right now. And they were just brutalized and embarrassed at home, 7-3 on their own rink, starting a key 7-game homestand. And now Housley shuffling lines. Literally, if they don't show up and win this game tonight, and there's a lot of hockey left to be played, I'm just telling you, I think they circle the wagon like this is a must-win. Because the next 3 weeks, not only for a team like Buffalo, but for a lot of teams around the NHL, the next 3 weeks are massive. The GMs, it's massive for Vegas, is in the middle of a cold snap. The GMs are trying to figure out, all right, what do I have to give my team? What are the players telling me they need? Or a GM saying, I don't care what the players are saying. I know they need this, and I'm going to shake things up. So the next 3 weeks is going to determine a lot in terms of, who's going to make deals on February 25th. So this is the critical time of the season right now.
Well, and you do videos over on our Bang the Book YouTube page, and I posted one yesterday about, some betting tips that I think are important in the month of February after the Super Bowl. And, when you look at the NBA and the NHL and even college basketball to a certain degree, these are very important times across all of those daily winter sports. The NBA, you're trying to bank wins before the deadline. The NHL, everybody's fresh. You've got that, that renewed sense of purpose coming out of the break. And the trade deadlines in both the NBA and the NHL. So I thought motivation, one of the biggest betting angles, it always is, but especially here in the month of February. That's what you're talking about here as well. Both of these teams should be sufficiently motivated because Minnesota in that wild card hunt in the West as well. But Buffalo getting embarrassed at home adds a little more fuel to that fire.
And teams generally, even bad teams, respond when they're embarrassed. And there's professional pride. And believe me, Buffalo just waived the guy, Remy Ellie, who they claimed from Dallas. They call C.J. Smith Upper Rochester. That ain't going to change anybody's world. But the bottom line is these guys are playing for jobs now. And the other thing, the timing of this, it better work because the timing of Housley doing this right now is pretty intriguing because you've got 3 weeks to sign Jeff Skinner. So you talk about desperation. They're moving Skinner down to play with Casey Middlestat, and the kid is playing really good. He just has had wingers that couldn't shoot it in the ocean. So now they bring Skinner down with him, and we'll see if they can find some quick chemistries. But the timing of this is really intriguing. You got to sign this guy. He's going to be a UFA. So now in the next 3 weeks, you want to sign this guy, and you're pulling him away from Eichel. You better hope that Skinner's all in on this. And then the other thing is I would look, and I don't know, I've been begging for this as a Sabres fan, and I'm telling you back to November and December. Carter Hutton's a nice addition, but he lets a horrible goal a game, one brutal goal a game, and they lose so many of these games by a goal. The kid is better. Linus Ullmark is the better goaltender. He's playing tonight. And this having the kid play occasionally has got to stop. Linus Ullmark, this is another opportunity too. Ullmark plays good tonight. He becomes the starting goaltender for this team.
Definitely a lot of things to watch here tonight in that game. That's game 005006 on the board. Let's go to game 015016. Vegas on the road against Tampa Bay. We've seen some pretty significant Vegas money hit the board here this morning as they've gone from about plus 150 down to plus 130.
Well, certainly out here, that's a function of it's a Golden Knights number, and everybody just runs to the window and bets these guys. But they've lost 4 in a row. They can't score at the moment. And the first line has been, underachieving to a degree, and it's not just solely on them. There are a lot of things that are in play. They played the backup goaltender off the break. Lagasse played against Carolina, and they lost that game. So they basically put all their eggs in the Panthers' basket, figure you play better off the shelf, or second game off the shelf, with Fleury, knowing that Tampa Bay was in the on-deck circle. So you're expecting a great effort from Vegas and Florida, and they didn't get it, and they lost 3-1. The luxury Vegas has, Adam, is they're home and cooled, right? I mean, they're in third place in the Pacific Division, so they're in. And you can't envision Arizona, Edmonton, or Anaheim or Vancouver making a run and making up 8 points. So the next month for this team is also let McPhee make a decision. Does he stand pat? And they've been saying, they've never been healthy. Or does he tweak the lineup? Or does he do something significant? And I think there's a real wide open window here for what George McPhee may do with this team. And the difference for the Golden Knights, last year was a Disney movie. It was Haley's Comet. And they were tilting the ice on teams on a nightly basis. That has not been the case through 54 games. These games are 50-50 in nature. They're just a good hockey team. They're not a great hockey team. They're a good hockey team. The difference this season is they try to peak at the right time when they get in. But I honestly believe that the Pacific Division winner, and Calgary doesn't seem like they're going anywhere. The Pacific Division winner is really in a great position because in the first round, Vegas is going to play San Jose. If it ended today, and that's kind of what it looks like. These two teams are going to beat each other up. Calgary likely gets a Vancouver, a Minnesota, or a Dallas. And so then maybe they can get through quick because that was the big thing with Vegas last year. And this really kind of hit me recently. The run that Vegas went on last year, and it was great. But it's like when you got to the playoffs, you're like, well, I wonder if this defense can hold up. The regular season's one thing. The playoffs are a different thing. Well, it was the closest 4-game sweep in the history of hockey. You know, every game was close. Quick played great, but Vegas swept L.A. And the fact that they swept L.A. is really why they went on the run, because they finally got worn down in the finals. But getting a sweep in the first round set them on their merry way. And this year, you got to think a first-round matchup with San Jose is going to be a 6-7 game series. And then Calgary would get them, maybe a worn-down, beat-up team, whoever it is that comes out, and then would probably, the odds are significantly in the favor of, they would play the winner of Winnipeg-Nashville after they just got done beating each other up. I mean, winning, all I care about is getting the playoffs, and an 8 seed can beat a 1. But in this particular season, I think the Pacific Division winners has a big edge in the Western Conference.
So looking at Vegas's game tonight here, Tampa Bay, pretty clearly the best team in the NHL. They're 7 points clear of Calgary, who's second with 73 points. Then the Jets with 70. So Tampa Bay, the clear class of this league. They're very good at home. They're very good on the road. Do you think that this price has kind of come into the range of taking Tampa Bay tonight, or do you feel like you do get that big Vegas effort?
Honestly, there are too many question marks for me right now. Can Vegas walk in there and win this game? Certainly they can. The worst team in hockey can walk into Tampa Bay and beat Tampa Bay. The goaltender is the great equalizer. Vegas wins this game tonight, Marc-Andre Fleury is going to stand on his head. Can that happen? Certainly it can. The one thing I would say, I wouldn't go near the game personally, but I'm sitting here, even looking at Tampa, and they are under for the last 7 games, Tampa Bay. With all that talent, they've gone under 6 of 7 times. And if Vegas is going to win, their goaltender is going to have to come up big. So if I had to play it, I'd probably lean towards a lower scoring game.
All right, so here's a question I got for you here. As we look ahead to this weekend, this is something I've picked up on here of late, and obviously they did it last weekend because of the Super Bowl. But here this weekend, there are 8 day games with local start times of 2 p.m. or earlier across the continent. So a lot of daytime hockey on Saturdays, carrying that over to Sundays as well. We'll talk about Sunday here in a second. But what do you think about all these earlier starts, Brian? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you find that there are good betting angles as a result?
I don't hate them. I think they tend to be quirky in nature because the players are such creatures of habit where they, morning skate, take a nap, and then play a game. And then the day games, obviously, they show up and play a game. I've not done the work. I just haven't watched this forever. I will tell you, I used to love, for years and years and years, Philly played an inordinate amount of Saturday afternoon games at home. I always used to play the Rangers when they'd go to the Spectrum, even that far back. And the Rangers would always have Philly's number on a Saturday afternoon. That just stuck in my head. The Philly day games are higher scoring games. Detroit's at Buffalo. Buffalo, for whatever reason, plays really good in the day. And they've got Detroit. So there are certain teams that do certain things in those day games. But it's still a hockey game, bud. You got to analyze, who's playing who. It's quirky. They're out of their routine. So maybe some uncharacteristic things happen. And then, like you said, I'm looking at the Saturday slate of games. It's insane.
Now, I want to ask you about Sunday here because NBC now doing its game of the week in that 12 or 12:30 time slot Eastern time. We talked about this a little bit with the NBA in the past on other segments here on Bang the Book Radio about, teams getting up for playing on TNT or on ABC or on ESPN. Do you think that there's a little bit more juice for those teams that play that NBC game or not really?
No. I don't think it means anything to them. If you wanted that angle would be Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday night. The fact that the game's on NBC doesn't mean a hill of beans to these guys. The majority of these teams, you go look at every team, probably a quarter of the players on virtually every team, these guys are from Southern Ontario. So Hockey Night in Canada on a Saturday night would remain the one where they get a buzz because they're on Hockey Night in Canada. I don't think they care that the game's on NBC.
I've mentioned that Hockey Night in Canada thing in my situational article before, both as a look-ahead factor and also potential letdown spot coming out of that game, especially, if somebody gets a Saturday, Sunday back-to-back after being on Hockey Night in Canada. I definitely think that's a great angle, and especially, too, as you mentioned, a lot of these Canadian-born players, Southern Ontario players, they're kind of in that wheelhouse, too, of when the NHL was, really high-scoring and really, really good in the, in the early to mid 90s. So those are guys that kind of have that nostalgia about that game, and it probably never gets old to be on Hockey Night in Canada.
Well, no, it's a big thing. And the other thing in Toronto's obviously a very good hockey team. But the Hockey Night in Canada thing is a big thing. But the other thing is specifically on those Saturday nights, and I'm just kind of glancing back, and I think, clearly, Toronto's a much better team now. But teams that go into Toronto on a Saturday night, those players get really jacked because they're going home. The Hockey Night in Canada thing we just discussed, but a lot of these teams come in there and, pick your team. A guy could come in there and he needs 20 tickets for friends and family that live up there. So the visitors always go into Toronto on a Saturday night with a defined bounce in their step. This year, Toronto's done a pretty good job on Saturday night, but in past years, teams would walk in there and just step up to the plate with incredible efforts and put on a show because they're playing in front of friends and family.
All right, so we transition from the NHL over to the golf side of things here. The Pebble Beach Pro-Am this weekend, obviously a very, very unique event. Amateurs, celebrities, going out there with the pros, 3 different courses in play here. And also, Brian, this year's handicap and really this year's event, little bit more of extra importance to it because the U.S. Open is at Pebble Beach later this year.
No, that's a great point. And it'll be so obviously this week, watch closely and mark that down. Guys that play well there. Dustin Johnson's coming off a win. We know how good he is anywhere. Specifically, he's good here. I'll always remember the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. Dustin Johnson had the tournament won. And on that weekend, I fortunately had Graham McDowell at 80-1. Dustin Johnson spit the bit. He flubbed it around on the front 9, and McDowell won. Jason Day, I'd watch him closely this week. He's on the board at 9-1. All these guys, they're going to go out there, and this is a unique thing. Go out, you have some fun, and it's a big 4-day party. But a lot of guys are going to be doing a lot of work, and these are little footnotes we can make for the U.S. Open. That's a great point. A couple of guys that are on my list. I'm saddened that the odds makers are maybe believing what I'm believing. To see Patrick Cantley is only 25-1. I think Cantley was the guy I would look at. And I'm also really upset that Matthew Fitzpatrick is only 40-1. I'm going to make a play on Matthew Fitzpatrick for the Masters at 100-1. That would be, if we were going to say one thing coming out of this thing, is never too early to bet the Masters, because if one of these players, Matthew Fitzpatrick's on the board at 100-1. If Matthew Fitzpatrick wins this week, it's a big if, but if he wins this week, he's 60-1 for the Masters. With every win, the Masters, it's like a defense partner in the NHL. They're on a hinge. You're going to win this week, all of a sudden that Masters number is going to come down. So those are kind of 2 of the guys I was looking at from a price perspective.
This is such a unique event because, this isn't a tournament where the big hitters are far and away, have a far and away advantage over the rest of the field, because all 3 of these courses are smaller. All 3 of them playing under 7,000 yards. It's kind of a little bit more of a, hit the fairways and then put it on the green type of course. So some of the longer guys, maybe not as accurate in the fairways, but then you look at the winners here. I mean, you had Ted Potter Jr. win this thing last year. He's in the 300-1 range. You had Vaughn Taylor in 2016, another triple-digit price, but also guys like Jordan Spieth, Brandt Snedeker twice, Phil 4 times. So you get some long shots here, but you also get some really good players that win here.
Well, you do. In the intangible that we have no way of knowing is the Pro-Am nature of this. And these guys are serious about the Pro-Am. and, they're playing with celebrities and corporate titans and all this stuff. But a part of this is who's going to embrace the festive nature of this thing. Because they're out there playing with amateurs. So, Adam, a lot of this, some of these guys just get out there and they're miserable because there's a lot of standing around, there's a lot of waiting, and you got guys playing that are kind of in your way, and guys get out of their routine for this tournament. So, in a lot of ways, you've got to find a guy with a really good personality who's going to embrace it and just, you go out there and you have fun with it, and then you try to get to Sunday, and then they kind of thin the herd, and it becomes a lot more serious. But it doesn't become really serious until Sunday. So, you got to try to find the guys that, Patrick Reed, he's 30-1. Like, he's a terrific player. He just flew back from Saudi Arabia. He can win anytime he tees it up. I'm more inclined to feel that Patrick Reed will be out there just miserable and want to get off the course than go out there and hobnob around, have a couple of chuckles. The personality matters for the golfer this week. It really does.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, too, because obviously we, try to isolate guys we think have a chance to win this and have some good prices trying to win this. But fading Patrick Reed in matchups makes a ton of sense this week because, as you mentioned, coming back off the long travel, and I think the sole reason Patrick Reed is playing this event is to get a feel for Pebble Beach before the U.S. Open. I don't think he has any interest in playing this thing this week. And, as you said, he's not a personable guy. I don't think we've ever read a story about, Pat singing praises of Patrick Reed's personality. So I would look to fade him in matchups here this weekend because I think all he's doing is taking mental notes for the U.S. Open.
Well, in fact, for all the bad beat stories we get, I had a lucky win over the weekend. I did a 2-team plus price parlay in Saudi Arabia with Dustin Johnson over Justin Rose, and Johnson wins the tournament. Rose missed the cut, so that was wonderful. So it comes down to Patrick Reed versus plus price, about 20 cents, versus Sergio Garcia. I wake up at 5 in the morning on Saturday, and I happen to put the TV on, and Garcia taps in for par and 18. They go, he had a long day. And they go back to the fairway, and Patrick Reed's 5 under. I'm like, I got a 5-shot lead. And the guy says, he's hitting his 6th shot on the par 5. He's already hit it in the water twice. He hits it in the water again. I turn the TV off. So I go back later when I wake back up to see that he took a 10 on the hole. I'm like, okay, so he's even with Garcia going to the final round. I then spend the next 15 minutes looking for Sergio Garcia. Where is he? What am I missing? Here Garcia was so ticked off the way he was playing, slammed his putter into the green 2 or 3 times, damaged the greens. Players chirped about him doing it. They DQ'd him. So I didn't even have to watch the thing on Sunday or sweat it out because Garcia got DQ'd. So they just throw that out there that all we do is whine about the bad beat. So I was on the good side of one of those for once.
I got one name that I'll throw out here as we wrap up talking about the Pebble Beach Pro-Am here. Bryce Garnett. He's 200-1 here this weekend. Obviously, as I mentioned last year, Ted Potter Jr. won at 300-1. So this can happen. It is rare, but it does happen. His only win, Coastal Course in Punta Cana. He hits a lot of fairways. He plays well at Mayakoba. He's got 3 top 10s there. A guy that seems to like these coastal courses. Maybe it's more of a laid-back type of atmosphere. And 8th in percentage of fairways hit. So at 200-1, why the hell not, right?
And I'll throw 3 at you. And these are guys that are in good form. Doug Gim, 100-1. Trey Mullinex was shooting some nice rounds in Phoenix. He's 100-1. I had a small play on Taylor Gooch this past week, and he spit the bed. He was terrible. But prior to that, the guy was 12th, 4th, and 3rd and shot a 65 at Torrey Pines. So he had a bad week. We talk about the form cycle for a golfer's, 3 to 5 weeks, other than the great guys that show up all the time. But with golf, I would make the horse racing analogy. This is how you make scores, is you have to be willing to forgive. It's like a horse racing. The horse had a bad race. Horse had a bad day. Sometimes you just got to be willing to draw a line through it. And, in your mind, if this horse runs the races he's capable of running, he should be 4-1. But because he had a bad last race, he's 12-1. I mean, you got to be willing to forgive. So I'm willing to forgive Taylor Gooch for just having a bad week. A lot of guys had a bad week in Phoenix. Taylor Gooch at 100-1 is not nuts.
Yeah, and I mean, another name that we've thrown out before here, a guy that, plays well at some
Perez.
of the courses.
I was waiting
Perez. Yep.
I was waiting. I made a side bet with my wife. I said 1-9. My good friend Adam, there are 2 words going to come out of his mouth today. Pat Perez.
Well, I'm glad you cashed that one. Hopefully she buys dinner for you tonight. Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. How can people get those 2 shows, Brian?
Well, it's post-football now, Adam, and the hockey push will be really soldiering on here. But sportsbookradio.com, all the shows are archived there. It's AM 1400 KSHP, noon to 2 Pacific time with the sportsbook directors, handicappers, and Sportsbook Radio, anything on the board. And then the NHL. And we go around the NHL. Yesterday, we talked about the Buffalo game. Mike Harrington from the Buffalo News was on yesterday. Today, from the Review-Journal from Tampa. Dave Shane covering the Golden Knights will be on. We get great guests from around the hockey world on Vegas Hockey Hotline. That's from 1 to 2 Pacific time, bud. And by the way, going to run out and do a Pebble Beach video for you today, and we'll have our videos on the Bang the Book YouTube channel.
Most definitely. You can follow Brian on Twitter at Brian Blessing. Brian, as always, buddy, a real treat. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you again next week. All right, Adam. Glad you made it through the cold stuff, buddy. There's light at the end of the tunnel.